One day in summer, Frog was not feeling well. Toad said, "Oh, Frog, you're looking quite green."
But I always look green, said Frog. I'm a frog.
"Oh, but today you look very green, even for a frog," said Toad. Get into my bed and rest for a while." Toad made Frog a cup of hot tea, and Frog drank the tea, and then he said,
Oh, tell me a story while I'm resting.
"All right," said Toad. Let me think of a story to tell you." So Toad thought and thought, but he could not think of a story to tell Frog. I'll go out on the front porch and walk up and down," said Toad. "Perhaps that will help me think of a story." So Toad walked up and down on the porch for a long time, but he could not think of a story to tell Frog. Then Toad went into the house and stood on his head.
Why are you standing on your head?
Asked Frog. "Well, I hope that if I stand on my head, it will help me to think of a story," said Toad. So Toad stood on his head for a long time, but he could not think of a story to tell Frog. Then Toad poured a glass of water over his head.
Why are you pouring water over your head? Asked Frog.
"Well, I hope that if I pour water over my head, it will help me to think of a story," said Toad. So Toad poured many glasses of water over his head, but he could not think of a story to tell Frog. Then Toad began to bang his head on the wall.
Why are you banging your head against the wall? Asked Frog.
I hope that if I bang my head against the wall hard enough, it will help me think of a story," said Toad.
I'm feeling much better now, Toad. I don't think I need you to tell me a story anymore.
Then you get out of bed and let me get into it," said Toad, "because now I feel terrible." So Frog said,
Well, would you like me to tell you a story, Toad?
Yeah. I mean, if you know one.
Well, once upon a time, said Frog, there were two good friends, a frog and a toad. The frog was not feeling well. He asked his friend, the toad, to tell him a story, and the toad couldn't think of a story. He walked up and down the porch, but he could not think of a story. He stood on his head, but he could not think of a story. He poured water over his head, but he could not think of a story. He even banged his head against the wall, but he could not think of a story. Then the toad did not feel so well, and the frog was feeling a little better. So the toad went to bed, and Frog got up and told him a story. The end. How was that, Toad?
"Toad?" said Frog. But Toad did not answer. He had fallen asleep.